Hello there, Drama 30 classmates. My name is Jacob Francis, and today I'll be doing an analysis on the movie American Me, which was filmed in 1992 and directed by Edward James Olmos. The film explores many different aspects of society that are very corrupt and not really serving a great purpose. Some of those aspects that we saw in the movie were definitely the correction system and a lot of racism throughout the whole entire film. What I liked most about the film was that it gave an insider view of a Chicano's life who was also like a gang member. You know, that's a life that not a lot of us are really accustomed to. So it was nice to get that first-hand experience to see the different aspects of it, to see how loyalty goes and just how they pretty much just treat each other. The movie's impact, I felt, was made definitely by the grotesque scenes that we saw. We saw a lot of things from rapes to killings to murders, betrayal, and scenes like that. At least for me, they're a good way to grab the audience's attention and make your point that much stronger. Like, we all remember a scene where somebody is brutally murdered. Like, that just sticks in our head. The first scene that we were very accustomed to was definitely probably the racism that we saw during the whole Zoot Suit era, when he was attacked by all those sailors and his girlfriend was raped. And then during the whole entire chaos, the police show up and we finally think they're going to get saved, but little do we know the police actually arrest the Chicanos instead of the sailors when the Chicanos were the ones getting beaten up, which was very, very unfortunate. And we can connect that back to the Zoot Suit riots that we would read about maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago when we watched that film. And that was actually, Edward James Olmos was in that as well, which was pretty interesting to see. Another aspect of the movie that I found very interesting was definitely the moral values of the characters. And the main character, Montoya Santana, just seeing how he grew up from a pretty innocent kid to turning into a cold-blooded gangster was very, very, very interesting, I'd like to say. And we saw how the influence of the gang can really turn some of the best people into monsters. And that main example is definitely Little Puppet. When he first came into the gang, you could tell he was very innocent. He was naive. On the outside, he wasn't doing a lot of the hardcore stuff that you see a lot of the guys doing now. But through the influence of the gang and their values on getting to the top and taking out all the competition, they were able to influence him into actually killing a man that he didn't even know. But he was just a rival gang member, so they had no choice but to kill him. And then we also saw the leader of the gang, Mr. Montoya, and how he conducted business. He had no problem at all killing his own men if they didn't want to do a job. And that was crazy because I'm not used to that. Loyalty is something that's strong with me, and I could tell through their gang ties it was, the life of somebody or it could be the death of somebody. If you're loyal to the crew, then, they would support you and do whatever they could. But as soon as you went against an action, like the other character did when he didn't want to kill anybody, they raped him. And that's another part of this aspects of moral values that I want to talk about are all the different rape scenes that we saw in the movie. And that was very tough to watch on a lot of those scenes, to see another grown man being handled in a manner like that. But it just went to show how the gangs didn't care. If they could disrespect you in any way, they would do it. And nothing was out of bounds in their minds. But then we saw that the loyalty ended up biting the main character in the butt, because in the end, he ended up being stabbed himself when he was, done with the gang. He wanted out. He wanted to be legit, but they didn't want to do that for him, so they ended up killing him as well. So just the whole moral aspect of the movie gave a first-hand view on how when you're in the gang, you're in the gang. There's no being halfway in, halfway out. And there's no wiggle room. If you're ordered to put a hit on somebody, you have to put a hit. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, or no, that's my third cousin on my grandma's side. You can't do that. You have to be all in for the gang. And that was a good part that, showed a lot of people that, this lifestyle is real. People live by this code and this creed. And it takes a certain person to be able to do that. And that's an aspect of society, and we like to put that person in the correction system. When in the correction systems, we hope that we're able to rehabilitate these people and put them back on the streets and be model citizens. But as we've seen through the movie, they come out better connected, stronger, and willing to do more because they're learning in the prison different ways to conduct criminal activity. We saw the character go in as a young boy and come out as a leader of La M, the Mexican gang that was killing people and pushing dope on the streets. So that's a big part of the movie that I like that they tackled, because that's been a hot topic for many years. Like, is our corrections facility actually rehabilitating these criminals? Like, are we making them better, when in reality they're turning them into super criminals? It's like a college for criminals, and they're getting their degrees in car thievery, selling drugs, performing hits. Like, I don't know, like the movie called, it begged the question, like, do we need to change the models of our prisons, which I definitely think they really need to. But doing my own research for this own movie, I found that, I'll break down the Mexican Mafia. The Mexican Mafia is within the jails. So wherever another Mexican gets put in prison or a jail, no matter what your background is or your affiliation with Bloods or Crips or, at that time, Northerners and Southerners, you all became one as soon as you entered the prison population. It didn't matter where you're from. When you're in prisons, you guys stuck together by your race. So it turned, and we saw that throughout the movie. But there were different fractions within the group that people didn't like each other. But the majority of the Mexican Mafia is just all the Mexicans band together in prison so they can have the ultimate protection against the blacks, the whites, and whoever else there is. But it turned out that the Mexican Mafia was actually very offended by the movie. And their main area of being offended was the rape scenes. Because it turned out in their own code of ethics, that goes against everything that they do. They're not into raping other men and doing all that. And the reaction ended up, there was many extortion plots against Mr. Olmos from the leader, what they call the godfather of the Mexican Mafia themselves. And then it also turned out that 3 consultants of the movie, one was an ex-gang member, another was a lady who had close ties to the gang, and these people were used to provide an authentic experience for the moviegoer like me and myself. They wanted the movie to be as authentic and as real as possible, and to do that, they brought in real people that were involved in the gang lifestyle. 3 of those consultants were actually gunned down and killed in front of their homes and in front of their families. One was after the first release of the movie, and then another was about a year later. So it went to show, like, this movie, I don't know if the Mexican Mafia felt like they were exposed or they were just really offended by the images portrayed. I almost think it was a combination of both, because I think to a certain level, if you do have consultants on the film, like, there are scenes on that movie that gave us a first-hand glimpse on what it's like to be, in a gang like that. And it was just interesting to feel that a movie like that could have such a huge impact that people would lose their lives over it. But nobody could have predicted that. And even till this day, Mr. Olmos himself has $1 million bounty on his head from the Mexican Mafia, because they want him killed because of that movie. They felt like they shined not just their gang in a bad light, but also researched that it shined Mexican men themselves in a bad light. A lot of the big complaints were that they made them look like animals, like beasts, just raping each other, killing each other. Like, a lot of people were offended that Mexican men were being portrayed like that, when in reality, there might be some, but that's just a small fraction of the population. But when it's put on a mass media platform like a movie, it tends to generalize everything. So we all know, like, there's a lot of good Mexicans out there. There's a lot of good other minorities out there. But the movie portrayed this one to such a great degree that it generalized all Mexican men within that film, which I felt wasn't true at all. But, it's a movie, and they were offended by it. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.